One. All right. This will be on layers in AutoCAD. So as I mentioned earlier, layers are basically separating families and different parts, grouping different parts together, and this is for control. I always tell my class, do not fight layers. You guys might not like layers, but they are your friends, believe me. Maybe not so much. They are your friends in this class, but you might not see the power of layers so much in the class. But when you get into industry, they're going to use upwards of maybe 200 layers in a drawing. So it's going to be used in industry. There's a lot of places for it, and especially when you get into multiple parts or multiple buildings or multiple stories in a building or multiple projects within a building, you're going to have a lot of layers to work with. All right, so let's take a look at, first of all, where the heck is layers. So up here in the layer panel is where layers is at. And as we can see, we have a layer properties, and then we have up here this window right here, and this is a great test question. Whatever is showing up there is your active layer. Your active layer. So right now, my active layer in this model here is the 0 layer is active. Now there's a little drop down below that, and unfortunately, it's showing the 0 layer and title block for some reason. Typically, when you open a new drawing, maybe that's what I should do. Let's see here. Yesterday, it wasn't cooperating opening a new drawing. Let's see if this does any better. All right. So I just opened a new drawing, a brand new, fresh drawing. You just see down here, model, layout 1 and layout 2. So we'll go with that. So whenever opening a new drawing, what was the first thing we set? We set our units. Leave them decimal. What's that? Units and dem styles, right, exactly right. So I'll go ahead and set my units there, enter for the dem styles, and I'll just do this real quick. I'm going to modify, and symbols and arrows, I'm going to set to 0.25. It's 0.35. If I put my glasses back on, I can read a little bit better. 0.25. One more time, 0.25, enter. And then I'll go to my text height. Typically, text height the same as the arrowhead size, 0.25, enter. And then I'm going to my primary unit tab. And I will set these to 2 places and for my decimals. I'll hit OK and close. And so I always said set your units first in a new drawing. So the first thing you would do is you open up your master title block, save it as, we'll call it widget, save it as widget, and then you'll set your units, set your dem styles. And then the next thing I would say to set is your layers. And that's what we're going to get into today is talking about these layers, setting those up and what they're used for. So I'm going to go ahead and put some figures here, some drawings in here. So we have something to work with. Come on, AutoCAD. And we'll put one more in here. And we'll put some hatching in this one. All right. So we have all these figures, and as I said previous, whatever shows up in this bar up here in the layers panel is your active layer. So if I do the drop down on here, I only have one layer. That's the zero layer. As I mentioned, companies will use sometimes over 200 layers. So right now we only have one layer. That's the zero layer. It's white, and there's options. It's not locked, it's not frozen, and it's not turned off. And I'll go over that again in just a minute. So everything I drew right now is on that zero layer. It's white. If I want to select it, and I'm going to talk about properties. That's one thing on my list to talk about is properties. And I'm going to diverse just a little bit for a second about properties. But I need to tell you about properties because they are tied into layers. Every geometric figure, doesn't matter what it is. It can be text, it can be an object, it can be hatching, it can be all kinds of things. So just put some text in here just to show you. So it can be all kinds of, oops, well, that was a nice rotation on that, like that. Wasn't following my command line, right? Somehow it gets. All right, so it can be text. Everything has a property. So to check your properties and to show you what properties are, I'm going to select one item here. I'm going to go ahead and select this line. And after selecting it, I can right-click anywhere. It doesn't have to be on the line. Right-click anywhere and go to Properties. And I'll get this toolbar that opens up here. These toolbars are dockable. They're movable. I can hold down on the left mouse button in the gray area, and I can move it around different parts of the screen. I can dock it off to the side. I can minimize it. I can do a bunch of things. I can adjust the size on it if I could get the grip to work right. I can do a bunch of things with it. Okay, not that. All right. So on this line that I selected, we have a bunch of different properties on there. The properties start off in general, and it says color. It tells you the layer that it's on. It tells you the line type. There's a thing called line type scale. We'll get more into that. It tells you the line weight. And everything I drew is by default in AutoCAD already set up, but we can change these things in here. It also tells you the length of the line down here towards the bottom. The angle is at 0. We'll talk more about angles probably tomorrow. And it gives you the X, Y, and Z of it, the coordinate position of it, and if there was a material assigned to it. So speaking of that, let's go ahead and choose this hatch here. And let's see what properties is on the hatch here. And here, this one is a little different. It adds more information and gives you the pattern of the hatch and geometric figure on that as well. Okay, so everything has a property. Doesn't matter what you're choosing. Again, you can minimize this, so it's still there, and I can hover over it, and it will open back up for me. I go away from it, it'll close, or I can close it completely. However I want to do that. They're handy to have open. I usually have properties open. I usually have layer properties open as well. All right, so now we know everything has a property. We know everything within that property has a layer. So let's get back to layers now and talk about the layer properties on this. So if we have a 0 layer, but we want additional layers, we're going to go to layer properties. Here we have the layer properties panel that opened up. And again, this one is dockable. It's movable. You can do a bunch of things with it. I'm going to go ahead and center it a little bit here. And within the layer properties, And I don't know why they do this all the time, but we can open up these different areas here so I can show you a little bit better what they are and how they work. All right. So this layer, this 0 layer, has this little light bulb. If I hit that light bulb, it will turn off the layer. I can freeze the layer so nobody can mess with it within a viewport, or I can lock the layer so nobody can change anything in it. I also could stop it from plotting if I don't want it to print. I just want it, maybe it's some notes I want for internal only. So I would put it on a layer, and then I don't want to print those off on the final drawing. I can select the printer, little printer under plot, and that will stop it from plotting or printing. And then I can change the color by clicking on the color. I can change the layer of that layer. Change the color of that layer. The line type, I can make it continuous, or I can select it and I can load different line types in there that we talked about and have different line types in there. The line weights, the same thing. I can choose the line weights and put different line weights on there for that layer. Transparency, we won't deal with too much, and then I can freeze it in a viewport so you won't even see it. And I can have a descriptor as well. All right, so let's look at if we want more than one layer while we're here. If we want different layers for different families, what are we going to do? We need to add a layer. So right up here we have 4 boxes. And if you hover over each one, it will tell you what it does. You can set it current. Remember that right now the 0 is our current layer because it's our only layer. I can delete a layer, but you can't delete a layer once you use the layer. Even if there's nothing on the layer, you can't delete it. So that's kind of a bad thing, I think. You can freeze a new layer in a viewport, or we can add a new layer, and that's what we want right now. We want to add a new layer. So this layer we're going to call hatching. And we're going to change that color of hatching to hopefully something you can see on the screen, cyan, and hit OK. And we're going to leave the line weights and everything else the same. Let's add another layer, left clicking on that. And this one we're going to call this one object line. Now, one thing I want you to notice, I was on the hatching layers, the last one I made. And then when I made this new layer, object layer, it replicates all the properties in that layer to this new one that I called object line. So whatever layer you're on, it's going to replicate that layer with these properties. So on object line, I don't want this cyan like I made it on the hatching. I'm going to turn this one to I think you'll be able to see a red on there. Pretty good. Okay. And I'm going to make another layer, but notice I'm on the object layer, and when I make a new layer, it puts the red one on that. Or if I would have had different line weights on that, which I did want to do on object. I'll come back to that in a second. And I'll make this one circle. And then I'll change that so we can designate different colors on that. To this green, I don't know if you're going to be able to see that. We'll try it. And then I'm going to go back. Let me go back to my object line because I want to make this object line layer, the line weight, I want to make that a little bit thicker. All right. And then I want to make a new layer, and I'm going to make this new layer, and I'm going to call that text. And then I'm going to change that layer color so it can designate a little better to something else. And we'll see how that works out. One more layer, excuse me, one more layer I'm going to make.